High Counselor Drem stood by the massive viewing window in the council tower. The capital city of Nexus Prime spread out below him, its towers gleaming in the pink light of the twin suns. For 8,000 years, the Galactic Council had ruled from this world. 8,000 years of peace and order. Drem's skin, normally a healthy blue, had paled to a sickly gray as he watched the hologram before him. "Play it again," he said. The aide nodded and reset the sensor recording. The three-dimensional star map appeared in the air between them. At first, everything looked normal. Trade routes glowed green. Member worlds pulsed with blue light, and patrol routes shimmered in yellow. Then, at the edge of the map, something appeared. Hundreds of small red dots emerged from what should have been empty space. Within moments, hundreds became thousands. "When was this recorded?" Drem asked. 6 hours ago, High Counselor," the aide replied. The objects came from Sector 87, beyond the outer rim. Drem frowned. "There is nothing in Sector 87. No habitable worlds. No resources worth mining." "That is correct, sir. Yet these ships came from there." Drem touched one of the red dots, and the hologram zoomed in. The ship's design was strange, all sharp angles and dark metal. No markings, no identifiable features that matched any known species. "Have they responded to hails?" "No, sir. They maintain perfect formation and continue their approach." The door to Drem's office slid open, and 5 figures entered. The Emergency Council, one representative from each of the founding species of the Galactic Union. They took their places around the hologram, faces grim. "Perhaps it is merely a trading fleet," suggested Counselor Torque, his insect-like mandibles clicking nervously. "The outer rim has many unregistered colonies. No trader flies in military formation," said Admiral Kalos. Unlike the others, Kalos wore a uniform instead of ceremonial robes. The old admiral had fought in the border wars 60 years ago, the last real conflict the Council had faced. His 3 eyes narrowed as he studied the hologram. And no trading fleet numbers in the thousands. "Could it be the Drift clans?" asked Counselor Mira. "They sometimes gather in large numbers for their migration ceremonies." Kilos shook his head. "The Drift clans are peaceful. Their ships are round and smooth, built for comfort during long journeys. These," he pointed to the red dots, "are warships." Silence fell over the room. The Council had not faced a real threat in generations. Minor rebellions, yes. Border disputes, of course. But nothing like this. An unknown armada approaching the heart of Council space. "We should scramble the defense fleet," Kalos said. "That would be an overreaction." Drem replied quickly. "We must not appear hostile. This could be a new species seeking first contact." "With thousands of warships?" Kalos asked, his voice rising. Before Drem could respond, the aide's communicator beeped. "High Counselor, we are receiving a transmission from the unknown fleet." "Put it through," Drem ordered. The hologram changed, showing a new image. A being sat in what appeared to be the command center of a ship. The being looked almost like a Voltorian, but with less pronounced facial features and pinkish-brown skin instead of blue. It wore a dark uniform with strange symbols on the shoulders. "This is Captain Tom Miller of the Earth vessel Vengeance, flagship of the Terran Armada. We request an immediate audience with the full Galactic Council." The room fell silent. Drem's aide leaned close to him and whispered, "Sir, according to records, Earth is the homeworld of the humans." "Humans?" Counselor Torque clicked in surprise. "That primitive single-system species. The one we quarantined 30 cycles ago." Admiral Kalos moved closer to the hologram, studying the human's face. They were deemed too aggressive for membership. The quarantine was meant to contain them until they matured as a species, or died out. Mira said quietly. The human captain's voice came again, firmer this time. "We know you can hear us, counselors. The time for hiding is over. 30 of your years you left us to die. 30 years we spent preparing. We are no longer the weak species you judged and abandoned." The hologram widened to show more of the bridge. Behind the human captain stood dozens more humans, all in similar uniforms, all standing at attention. "The Terran Armada will reach Nexus Prime in 24 hours, Captain Miller said. "Be ready to answer for your crimes." The transmission cut off, leaving the room in stunned silence. Admiral Kalos was the first to speak. "Now," he said grimly, "can we scramble the defense fleet?" The council chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from all 500 member species had arrived within hours of the emergency call. The air hummed with nervous whispers and anxious clicks of various communication appendages. High Counselor Drem stood at the central podium, his blue skin still pale with worry. Behind him, a massive screen showed the human fleet, now positioned strategically around Nexus Prime and 4 other key council worlds. "Silence, please," Drem called out. The chamber gradually quieted. "As you all know, an armada from Earth has entered our space. Their ships now surround our most important worlds." "How did primitive humans build such a fleet?" shouted a representative from the back. Admiral Kalos stepped forward. "They were never truly primitive. We underestimated them." The main doors to the chamber slid open. A group of 10 humans entered, led by Captain Tom Miller. The council representatives gasped and moved back, creating a clear path to the center of the room. The humans walked with perfect military precision. Unlike the colorful robes worn by the council species, they wore dark uniforms with minimal decoration. They carried no visible weapons, yet every alien in the room sensed danger. Captain Miller stopped before the central podium. He looked up at Drem without bowing. A clear insult in council protocol. "High Counselor," Miller said, his voice firm and clear. "The Terran Armada has come to deliver the response of Earth to your quarantine order of 30 years ago." Drem tried to look calm. "Captain Miller, this is highly irregular. If Earth wished to appeal the quarantine, there are proper channels." "We are not here to appeal," Miller interrupted. "We are here to end the Council's rule." Gasps echoed through the chamber. "That is treasonous talk," said Counselor Torque, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. Miller smiled, but the expression held no warmth. "Treason requires loyalty first. Earth owes no loyalty to the Council that sentenced us to death." "Death?" Drem asked. "The quarantine was merely meant to contain our aggressive tendencies," Miller finished. "Yes, that was the public reason. But we know the truth. The nanite weapons your scientists released into our atmosphere, the slow death you planned for us." The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. Many representatives looked genuinely surprised. Others looked away guiltily. Admiral Kalos stepped forward. "Is this true, Drem? Was Earth targeted for elimination?" Before Drem could answer, Miller raised his hand. A small holographic projector activated, showing images of Earth's major cities. In each image, humans walked normally, but the air around them sparkled with tiny lights. "These are the nanites," Miller explained, "designed to gradually destroy our crops, poison our water, and eventually alter our genes to prevent reproduction. A slow, quiet genocide that would look natural to any outside observer." He turned off the projector and faced the Council. "Fortunately for us, humans are good at surviving. Our scientists detected the nanites within months of your departure. We contained them, studied them, and learned from them." Miller touched a device on his wrist. The massive screen behind Drem changed to show a Council defense station orbiting a nearby moon. As they watched, a single human destroyer approached the station. "This is happening right now," Miller said. The destroyer fired a small, barely visible projectile. When it hit the station, nothing seemed to happen for several seconds. Then, like sand washing away in water, the entire station began to dissolve. The Council chamber watched in horrified silence as the massive station simply vanished, leaving no debris. "Our version of your nanite weapon," Miller explained calmly. "We could have used it on your populated worlds. We could have wiped out your species as you planned to wipe out ours. Instead, We chose to show restraint, a trait your council believed humans lacked. Admiral Kalos moved closer to Miller. What do you want? Justice, Miller replied. The complete dismantling of the current Galactic Council, a full accounting of all species targeted for elimination, and the trial of those responsible. This is outrageous, shouted Councillor Torque. We will not be dictated to by a single species. Miller looked at Torque, then back at the screen. Another human destroyer was moving into position near a different station. You misunderstand, Councillor, Miller said quietly. This is not a negotiation. For the first time in its 8,000-year history, the Galactic Council called for an emergency vote. The question before them was simple: surrender to human demands or fight a war they might not survive. The vote began as human ships took position above every major council world. The council vote ended in chaos. No clear decision was reached as representatives argued, threatened, and even physically fought with one another. Some demanded immediate military action against the humans. Others begged for surrender. Many simply fled the chamber, rushing to contact their home worlds. In this confusion, Councillor Lyra, a tall, slender being with pale green skin, quietly approached Captain Miller. Captain, she said softly, not all of us knew about the nanite attack on Earth. Many of us would have opposed such an action had we known. Miller studied her face. Unlike most council members, her 4 eyes met his gaze directly. I believe you, he said finally. But belief doesn't change what happened. No, it doesn't, Lyra agreed. But perhaps we can change what happens next. Will you speak with me privately? One last attempt at peaceful resolution. Miller considered for a moment, then nodded. 1 hour. Your office. Bring no more than 2 others. Lyra bowed slightly. Thank you, Captain. 1 hour later, Miller arrived at Lyra's office with 2 human officers, his second in command, Commander Wilson and Ambassador Alex Reed, a diplomat who had joined the fleet from Earth. The office was simple by council standards. No gold decorations or rare artifacts, just plain walls and practical furniture. Lyra waited with Admiral Kalos and a small orange-skinned being Miller didn't recognize. This is Taz, Lyra introduced the orange being. He was junior science officer when the Earth quarantine was ordered. He has information you should hear. Taz stepped forward nervously. The nanite project was called Operation Garden. Only 12 people in the entire council knew about it. I discovered it by accident while archiving old research files. Taz placed a data crystal on the table. It projected images of laboratory reports and secret meetings. Earth wasn't the first, he continued. There were 17 other species before you, all deemed too aggressive or too unpredictable for the galactic community. Ambassador Reed leaned forward. What happened to these species? Extinction, Taz whispered. Complete extinction. Earth is the only planet that detected the nanites and survived. The room fell silent. Commander Wilson's hand moved to her weapon, but Miller gestured for her to remain calm. Why? Miller asked. Why target these species? Why target us? Admiral Kalos answered, his 3 eyes filled with shame. Fear. The Council's founding species, the Voltorians, the Zix, the Moor, the Alandi, and the Trell, have ruled for 8,000 years. They fear any species that might one day challenge them. Ambassador Reed nodded slowly. And humans, with our adaptability, and yes, our capacity for conflict, frightened them enough to warrant elimination. But now you return stronger than ever, Lyra said, which proves their fears were justified. Miller slammed his fist on the table. We returned stronger because you tried to kill us. We adapted out of necessity. Before your nanites, Earth was focused on exploration and trade. We wanted to join the galactic community, not conquer it. Lyra looked at him with all 4 eyes. And now? What does Earth want now, Captain? Justice, Miller said firmly. And guarantee that no other species will suffer as we nearly did. Ambassador Reed opened a small case and removed an official-looking document. This is our proposal. The complete restructuring of galactic governance. No more hidden councils making secret decisions. No more species designated as superior to others. Admiral Kalos took the document and scanned it quickly. This would end 8,000 years of tradition. Your tradition, Reed corrected, is our nightmare. 8,000 years of the strong deciding which of the weak deserve to live or die. Taz looked at the data crystal still projecting images. There's more, he said quietly. Operation Garden wasn't just about eliminating aggressive species. It was about harvesting their technology first. Every advancement the Council has claimed in the past 1,000 years came from species they later destroyed. Lyra's skin paled. Is this true, Kalos? The Admiral didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. We have 1 day, Ambassador Reed said, standing. 1 day for the Council to accept our terms. After that, we will enforce them. As they turned to leave, Lyra called out, and if we refuse? Miller stopped at the door. Then we'll do what humans do best, survive, even if it means you don't. The door closed behind them, leaving Lyra, Kalos, and Taz staring at the images of extinct civilizations whose only crime had been their potential. News spread quickly across Council space. Within hours, everyone knew about the human accusations. Some dismissed them as lies. Others demanded answers from their representatives. The carefully maintained unity of the Galactic Council began to crack. On his flagship Vengeance, Captain Miller watched reports flood in from across the galaxy. Beside him, Commander Wilson analyzed tactical data. The Council military is mobilizing, she reported. Ships are gathering at these 6 locations. The screen highlighted star systems near important Council worlds. Miller nodded. And the civilian response? Ambassador Reed joined them, his face tired but determined. Exactly as we predicted. 28 species have already declared neutrality. 7 have openly sided with us. And the others? Confused, scared, waiting to see what happens next. Reed handed Miller a data tablet. We need to give them something more concrete than accusations. We need proof they can't ignore. Miller studied the information on the tablet. The research facility at Della Station. That's where the nanite program was developed. Reed nodded. According to Taz's information, yes. All the records of Operation Garden should be there, including the list of all targeted species. Miller turned to Commander Wilson. Prepare a strike team. We move in 6 hours. Della Station orbited a dead moon in a forgotten corner of Council space. Its official purpose was agricultural research, but few ships ever visited it. The station's defenses were minimal, a testament to how confident the Council had been in their secrecy. 3 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the station. The largest, a cruiser named Defiance, positioned itself directly above the station. 2 smaller vessels flanked it. Inside the lead ship, Captain Miller addressed the strike team. 20 men and women in lightweight combat armor. Our goal is information, not destruction, he said. We need the research files intact. Minimal casualties if possible. The scientists there may not know what they're really working on. The team nodded. They had trained for this mission for months. Commander Wilson will lead the ground team, Miller continued. I'll coordinate from here. Wilson checked her weapon, a non-lethal stun device. We're ready, sir. The strike team boarded their shuttle and launched toward the station. On Nexus Prime, the Council remained deadlocked. High Counselor Drem desperately tried to maintain order as representatives shouted accusations at each other. The humans are lying, insisted Counselor Torque. We would never commit genocide. Then why haven't you denied the specific charges? Asked a representative from the Breel, a usually quiet species. Show us proof that this Operation Garden doesn't exist. Before Torque could answer, his aide rushed to his side and whispered urgently in his ear. Torque's mandibles clicked in alarm. What is it? Demanded Drem. Della Station, Torque replied, his voice shaking. It's under attack by human forces. The chamber erupted in fresh chaos. In the confusion, Counselor Lyra slipped away to her private office. She had made her decision. Opening a secure channel, she contacted Captain Miller's ship. "The Council is fracturing," she reported. "Many species now question everything they've been told. But we need the proof from Delos to completely break their unity." "We're retrieving it now," Miller's voice replied. Commander Wilson led her team through the silent corridors of Delos Station. They had encountered almost no resistance. Most of the staff had surrendered immediately, shocked by the sudden appearance of humans, a species many thought was contained on a distant, quarantined world. The central research lab was secured with heavy doors and advanced locks. Wilson placed a small device against the control panel. Within seconds, the doors slid open. Inside, they found what they were looking for, and more. The lab contained not just records of Operation Garden, but biological samples from the extinct species, preserved specimens, genetic material, cultural artifacts. "They kept trophies," whispered one of the team members in horror. Wilson's face hardened as she ordered, "Download everything. Every file, every image, every record." As the team worked, Wilson opened a communication channel to the Vengeance. "Captain, you need to see this. It's worse than we thought. They didn't just kill those species, they studied them like lab animals first." Miller's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Get everything, Commander. The galaxy needs to know the truth." Within an hour, the human ships departed from Delos Station, leaving the facility intact but empty of staff. The truth they carried with them would change the galaxy forever. The evidence from Delos Station spread across every communication channel in the galaxy. Billions of beings watched in horror as the truth was revealed. Recordings of council leaders calmly discussing which species to eliminate, detailed plans for nanite deployment, and the disturbing collection of specimens from extinct civilizations. The reaction was immediate and violent. On 37 council worlds, citizens took to the streets. Government buildings burned. Council representatives fled or were captured by their own people. On the Voltorian homeworld, Supreme Commander Valk watched the chaos with cold fury. Unlike many council leaders, Valk had not run. Instead, he had gathered every loyal military ship he could find. "The humans have destroyed in days what took us millennia to build," he told his assembled officers. "They must pay for this." "Sir," objected one of his captains, "many worlds are siding with the humans. This is no longer just about Earth." "It was never just about Earth," Valk replied. "It's about order versus chaos. The species we removed were threats to galactic stability. The Council maintained peace for 8,000 years. What do humans offer in its place? Anarchy." He activated a holographic display showing a massive fleet gathering at a hidden base. "We have 300 ships ready. The humans have spread their forces thin, trying to control too many systems at once. We will strike directly at their command ship, the Vengeance." One officer stepped forward. "Sir, the humans possess technology derived from our nanite weapons. Our standard defenses may not." "We are not using standard defenses," Valk interrupted. He pressed a button, revealing a new weapon mounted on his flagship. "This is the Star Drinker. It harvests energy from a star's core, then releases it in a single blast. Nothing can withstand it." The officers stared in shock. Such a weapon violated every treaty the Council had ever signed. "Desperate times," Valk said quietly, "required desperate measures." On the Vengeance, Captain Miller received the warning too late. Long-range sensors detected Valk's fleet emerging from faster-than-light travel just outside the Nexus system. "Battle stations," Miller ordered. "All ships, defensive formation Delta." The human fleet responded quickly, ships moving into position around their flagship. But they were outnumbered. Many human vessels had been sent to protect allied worlds or secure key locations. "Captain," reported the sensor officer, "the enemy flagship is powering up some kind of energy weapon. It's drawing power directly from the nearest star." Miller watched the tactical display with growing concern. Contact Commander Wilson. Tell her to bring all available ships back to. He never finished the sentence. A blinding beam of energy cut through space, hitting 3 human ships before they could evade. The vessels simply vaporized, leaving nothing behind. Evasive maneuvers, Miller shouted. All ships, scatter formation. The Vengeance turned sharply, its engines glowing bright blue as it accelerated away from the Council fleet. But Vox's ships pursued relentlessly. Another energy beam lashed out, this time grazing the Vengeance's port side. Alarms blared throughout the ship as systems failed and fires broke out in multiple sections. On the bridge, Miller was thrown against a console. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead as he struggled back to his feet. Damage report. Port shields offline. Engines at 60%. We have hull breaches on decks 4 through 7, reported the tactical officer. Miller tapped his communication panel. This is Captain Miller to all human ships. Activate Protocol Omega. I repeat, activate Protocol Omega. Across the human fleet, commanders received the message and entered a special code into their ship computers. Immediately, the vessels began to move in strange, unpredictable patterns. Their weapons fired with uncanny precision, hitting weak spots in the Council ships that should have been impossible to target. On Vox's flagship, officers watched in confusion. Sir, the human ships are moving in ways that defy tactical logic, one reported. It's as if they can predict our maneuvers before we make them. Vox stared at the battle display. Impossible. No one could calculate. Then understanding dawned on his face. The nanites, they didn't just reverse engineer them for weapons. They evolved them into a combat intelligence system. The Star Drinker fired again, but this time every human ship evaded the blast. Then, moving as one perfect unit, the human vessels concentrated fire on the Council flagship. Despite his injuries, Miller managed a grim smile. Protocol Omega, the ultimate integration of human intuition and machine precision, was working. The tables had turned. The battle for Nexus Prime lasted less than 3 hours. Despite having superior numbers, Vox's fleet couldn't match the impossible precision of the human ships. One by one, Council vessels were disabled or destroyed. The Star Drinker, for all its power, could not hit targets that seemed to know where it would fire before it did. In the end, Vox's flagship stood alone, surrounded by human vessels. Surrender, Commander Volk. Miller's voice came through the communication system. Your crew need not die today. Volk stood rigid on his bridge, surrounded by injured officers and damaged equipment. I would rather die than surrender to humans. That can be arranged, Miller replied coldly. But your crew deserves a choice. The bridge crew of the Council flagship exchanged glances. One by one, they stepped away from their stations. Finally, Vox's second-in-command spoke. Sir, we surrender. He turned to the communication system. Captain Miller, we accept your terms. Volk reached for his weapon, but 2 officers restrained him. The once mighty Supreme Commander was led away, his final battle lost. On the Vengeance, Captain Miller sat in the medical bay as a doctor treated his injuries. You should rest, Captain, the doctor advised. That head wound is serious. Miller tried to stand. There's no time. We need to secure Nexus Prime before. The ship's communication system interrupted him. Captain, this is Commander Wilson. We've secured the Council archives. You need to see what we found. Miller glanced at the doctor, who sighed in resignation. Fine, the doctor said, but I'm coming with you. The Council archives were located beneath the capital city of Nexus Prime. For 8,000 years, the records of the Galactic Council had been stored here, their triumphs, their decisions, and their secrets. Commander Wilson met Miller at the entrance. Her uniform was dirty and torn from the fighting, but her eyes were bright with excitement. Captain, we found something incredible, she said, leading him down a long corridor. It's behind a hidden door that Admiral Kalos helped us locate. They entered a large circular room. In the center stood a pillar of light. a data storage system more advanced than anything Miller had seen before. Admiral Kalos was already there, working at a control panel. He looked up as they entered. "The Founder's Archive," Kalos said quietly. "Only the highest council members ever access this. I've been here just once before, when I was promoted to Admiral." "What does it contain?" Miller asked. "The true history of the galaxy," Kalos replied. He pressed a final button, and the pillar of light expanded, filling the room with three-dimensional images. Miller stared in shock. The images showed beings unlike any known species, tall, ethereal creatures with 6 limbs and glowing eyes. "The Primarchs," Kalos explained. "The true rulers of the Council. The 5 founding species are merely their servants." The images change, showing these Primarchs arriving in the galaxy 50,000 years ago. "They came from somewhere else," Kalos continued. "Another galaxy, perhaps. They found our worlds primitive, easy to control. They uplifted some species to serve them, like my own. Others they monitored, allowing to develop until they showed signs of true independence or advancement. Then those species were marked for elimination." "The nanite program," Miller said, understanding dawning. "Just the latest method," Kalos confirmed. "Before that, it was engineered plagues, redirected asteroids, induced solar flares, anything that would appear natural." Wilson shook her head in disbelief. "All to maintain control." "Control, yes, but also fear." Kalos pointed to new images appearing in the light. Strange, dark shapes moving between stars. "The Primarchs fled something. Something they fear will follow them here eventually." Miller watched the images, his mind racing. "Where are they now?" "These Primarchs?" "Here on Nexus Prime," Kalos replied. "In a secure facility beneath this building. They rarely interact with anyone besides their most trusted servants." Miller turned to Wilson. "Assemble a team. We're going to meet the true rulers of the galaxy." As they prepared to leave, Miller paused, looking back at the images of the dark shapes pursuing the Primarchs across space. "Admiral," he asked, "what are those things they're running from?" Kalos stared at the shadowy forms. "The archives don't say. The Primarchs call them simply the Void. Whatever they are, the Primarchs have been preparing for their arrival for 50,000 years, using our galaxy and its species as resources for a war they believe is coming." Miller's eyes narrowed. "Then perhaps it's time they shared that information with the rest of us." Deep beneath Nexus Prime, Captain Miller led his team through ancient corridors. Admiral Kalos guided them past security systems designed to keep all but the most trusted servants away from the Primarchs. "No one has challenged them in 50,000 years, Kalos said quietly. "They may not even understand the concept of defeat." The corridor ended at a massive door made of a strange, shifting metal. Kalos placed his hand on a panel, and the door slowly opened. Beyond lay a vast chamber unlike anything the humans had seen before. The walls glowed with soft blue light. In the center, 5 tall, ethereal beings floated above the floor. Their 6-limbed bodies shimmered, and their eyes glowed with inner light. "The Primarchs," Kalos whispered. As the humans entered, the Primarchs turned. Though they had no visible mouths, their thoughts suddenly appeared in everyone's minds. These creatures here. Say Arvand. Asterisk. The mental voice was cold and powerful. Before Kalos could answer, Miller stepped forward. "We're not creatures. We're humans, and we're here because your council tried to wipe us out." The tallest Primarch floated closer. Asterisk. Yes. The Eggaris SIV species. Uguri Mimarked for Rehemovl. Yet UPRZist. Volunteeristy. Asterisk. Ambassador Reed joined Miller. "We've seen your archives. We know what you've done to countless species. We know you're running from something." The Primarchs seemed to communicate silently among themselves. Finally, the tall one spoke again. Asterisk, what we favli is beyond your comprehension. The void consumes all. We prepare this galaxy to resist asterisk by killing any species that might challenge you. Miller asked angrily, how does that prepare anyone? Asterisk unity requires control. Divergent species bring chaos. We against us against evoid asterisk. Reed shook his head. You're wrong. Diversity brings strength, not weakness. Different perspectives, different solutions. Earth was nearly destroyed by your nanites, but we survived because of our diversity. Our scientists, our soldiers, our leaders all thinking differently. For the first time, the Primarchs seemed uncertain. They floated closer together, their mental voices hushed. Miller turned to Kalos. How long until this void reaches our galaxy? According to the archives, less than 100 years, Kalos replied grimly. Miller faced the Primarchs again. We have a proposal. You will give up control of the Galactic Council. You will share all your knowledge about the void. In return, we won't destroy you for your crimes against countless species. Asterisk, you can note DEFE 8. The void without US asterisk, the Primarch insisted. Maybe not, Miller agreed. But we'll have a better chance working together as equals than under your control. Humanity survived your best attempt to kill us. If the void is worse, we need everyone's ideas, not just yours. The Primarchs went silent, their glowing eyes dimming slightly as they considered. Finally, they responded. Asterisk, we YLCONSIDER, your TRMS asterisk. 3 months later, representatives from over 500 worlds gathered in the rebuilt council chamber on Nexus Prime. The old council had been dissolved. In its place stood a new alliance, the Galactic Union. Captain Miller, now Admiral Miller, stood at the central podium. His injuries had healed, leaving only a small scar on his forehead. Beside him stood Ambassador Reed and representatives from dozens of species, including some that had once been loyal to the old council. Today marks a new beginning. Miller addressed the assembled delegates. For too long, this galaxy lived under the shadow of fear of difference, fear of change, and fear of a threat most never knew existed. He gestured to a display showing the void. Dark, shapeless entities moving between stars at the edge of the galaxy. The Primarch's knowledge has been shared with all. We know what approaches, but unlike before, we will face it together, not as masters and servants, but as allies. The Primarchs themselves stood in a corner of the chamber, no longer floating above others, but standing on the same floor. Their power had been limited, their control ended. Now they served as advisors, not rulers. As Miller finished his speech, ships arrived from beyond known space. Vessels from independent colonies, lost human outposts, and even species that had hidden from the Council for centuries. Word had spread of the Council's fall and the new Union's formation. The galaxy was uniting, not through control and fear, but through respect and common purpose. As Miller watched the new delegates arrive, Commander Wilson approached him. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. All the fighting, all the loss. Miller looked out at the gathering. Hundreds of species coming together as equals for the first time in 50,000 years. Ask me again when the void arrives, he said. But for now, yes, I believe it was.